Hello, welcome to the Hockey Sense podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Kessner. And before we get into hockey, I want to do a quick apology. I'm very sorry for not being able to do a podcast over the last 2 weeks. I've been very busy and unfortunately have not been able to sit down and record a podcast. So I'm very sorry about that. Um, but to make up for lost time, I'm going to be talking about some topics that I would have talked about in the those 2 weeks of podcasting. So I will talk about those main topics. So don't worry about that. We're also going to be talking about some new topics here, and we'll break that down as we get into. We'll break down each topic as we get into the podcast. So, um, just to make up for lost time, let's start with the Stanley Cup champions, the Pittsburgh Penguins. So, if you were not watching the Stanley Cup final, Game 6, um, then I don't know where you were, but the Pittsburgh Penguins repeat and win the Stanley Cup for a second year in the row. So yeah, Pittsburgh is very strong in terms of coaching. I think coaching was their biggest asset in this series. Mike Sullivan is an outstanding coach, and as I said I believe I said it in the last podcast, and I will say it again. Mike Sullivan, I think, is the best coach in the league by far. Um, you can make arguments for top 10 uh, coaches in the league, but I think that Mike Sullivan is the best out of all of them. He's better than Coach Quenneville. He's better than Coach Sutter, from formerly the LA Kings coach. I think Coach Mike Sullivan is the best coach in the NHL right now. He knows the right way to push people's buttons. He knows when to be calm. He knows when to be loud. And I think he knows when to adjust his lines and what needs to work. Now, granted, I'm not going to say that he won the Stanley Cup, but he did a lot to help his team win the Stanley Cup. The Pittsburgh Penguins as a whole is an experienced bunch, and they've won Stanley Cups together before, and because of that, I think that also helped. So let's talk about Game 6, and here are the statistics for Game 6. So shots on goal, 29-27. If I'm Pittsburgh, I'm not like super happy with that. I think that the Pittsburgh Penguins should have had more shots on net. But 29 is a decent number, but I kind of wish they had more. If I'm the Nashville Predators, 27 shots on net is nowhere near enough. If you want to push the Pittsburgh Penguins to a Game 7, you have to throw a lot of pucks at the net, and you have to do everything in your power to win Game 6, to force a Game 7. They did not come out with the firepower necessary to win Game 6, so that is a very disappointing number if I'm a Nashville Predator. Face-off percentage, 32% for the Pittsburgh Penguins, 68% for the Nashville Predators. This is a very intriguing number, but a very predictable number, I think, because of the loss of Nick Bonino for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Outstanding face-off work for the Nashville Predators in this game, winning possessions off of draws. But the problem is that they didn't produce off of this at all. In fact, winning face-off percentage, this could have been 100-0. You know, they could have won 100% of the face-offs, and Pittsburgh could have won absolutely none of them, and I think Pittsburgh would have still won this game. This is an outstanding number for the Nashville Predators, but they did nothing with this. Absolutely nothing. And we're going to talk about that here in a moment on why I think that is. But they didn't do anything with this number. This number goes to show you that while faceoffs are important, if you do nothing with those faceoffs and you don't come out to win the hockey game, nothing will happen and you'll lose the hockey game. Power plays. Again, 4 power plays for the Nashville Predators. They did nothing with them. They did not get a single goal off of those power plays. This is a very detrimental number for the Nashville Predators. You need to convert on at least one of these power plays to even be considered in the game. And because of that, they did not force a game 7. Hits were fairly even. Blocks were fairly even. It's just these numbers are fairly even, and a couple of the numbers are skewed for the Nashville Predators. So what does this mean? Well, for the first 2 periods of the game, it was actually pretty even in terms of the amount of play and the amount of drive. The only difference is that the Pittsburgh Penguins came out with more pressure in the third period. They came out with more pressure, more drive, and they started to play more like the Pittsburgh Penguins. Neither team was playing particularly well for the first 2 periods. And both teams were playing fairly conservative. The difference is I thought Pittsburgh actually had the drive and the motivation to win the game, but they were just playing very conservative and very they didn't want to take too many risks. And that's kind of how I felt about Pittsburgh when they were playing in Game 6. The Nashville Predators, on the other hand, I have so many things I could say about the Nashville Predators, but one of the things that I will say is I was right. If you listen to my last podcast I talk about all the comments that the Nashville Predators were making, the coaching staff and the players. I was talking about the comments that they were making. And from what I heard was the Nashville Predators were basically treating it like it was game 2. They were going into game 2 and they had just lost game 1. And they were like super laid back about it. And they're like, oh, this happened, but we can win game 6. Which I understand you need to move on from game 5, which was a terrible loss. But you have to understand that you have to come in with some urgency to win game 6. And their comments to me did not sound like game 6 was a game that they were coming in with a lot of drive on. And because of that, I thought they would lose game 6. And I was right. It was a closer game, as I said. I didn't think it would be this close, but it was a closer game. And I will say that the Nashville Predators didn't come out with enough drive. Shots on goal alone points this out. Power plays does not help either. They just did not come out with enough momentum, and they did not come out with enough drive to win game 6. They needed to come out with urgency and understand that their backs are against the wall. If they don't win this game, they're dead. Not literally dead, but they don't win the Stanley Cup. They have nothing left. This is their last game if they lose. And they needed to realize that, and they didn't. And it showed in their play. So, not that Pittsburgh played particularly well to win game 6, but they did play a little bit better, and they came out with a little bit more urgency. I thought if Nashville had come out with urgency, they could have won that game, but they didn't. So, all props to the Pittsburgh Penguins for winning this game, winning game 6, and winning the Stanley Cup. Congratulations. Before I move off of this, I will say I predicted a 6-game series, so I was right about one thing in this entire Stanley Cup predictions and all that. I predicted that this would go to a game 6 after Nashville and Pittsburgh were announced, of course. But I predicted that it would go to game 6. So I was right on that. I did not predict correctly, however, that the amount of the leads of games. I thought that it would be overtime and double overtime games throughout, and it really wasn't. It was not close at all in any of the games except for game 6 in terms of score. So I was wrong on that. So Yeah, I was wrong on that, but I was right about Game 6. So, and I was also right about the Pittsburgh Penguins winning the Stanley Cup. So, congratulations, Pittsburgh. You guys won the Stanley Cup, and you guys did a two-peat. Um, I will. I also do want to talk about this for a little bit. I do think that the Stanley Cup dynasty that everyone wants to talk about of the Chicago Blackhawks. I don't think the Chicago Blackhawks are a dynasty. Um, and part of that is because of the in between Stanley Cups, the two Stanley Cups that the LA Kings won, in between the Chicago Blackhawks winning their cups. If Chicago had won in a back-to-back in at least one of those cups, for example, if they had won in 2013 and 2014, I would consider them Stanley Cup contenders. Or I'm sorry, dynasty, a dynasty team for sure. The being a Stanley Cup contender for those 5 years and winning 3 cups in 6 years is very impressive, but I don't think it leads to the fact that you are a dynasty. In my opinion, you must, in order for you to be a dynasty, you have to at least win a back-to-back. That is how I've always looked at a dynasty. A dynasty is someone who cannot be beaten. A dynasty is someone who is one of the scariest team in the league. Not one of the scariest team in the league, and for good reason. This year, the Pittsburgh Penguins proved that winning a Stanley Cup back-to-back is possible. Because that's an argument that I hear from Chicago fans is that, or people who think that Chicago is a dynasty at the very least, that Chicago's a dynasty because back-to-back Stanley Cups in the modern era are just not possible. Well, Pittsburgh just proved you wrong. And in my opinion, you have to win back-to-back in order to be a dynasty, in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, Chicago definitely is a legacy in my mind. I will consider them a legacy. They did outstanding work. They definitely won 3 cups in 6 years, and they are definitely a threat in the league to win the Stanley Cup. But I am not going to sit there and say they're a dynasty, and Pittsburgh is the reason for that because they won in back-to-back years. So I felt like I wanted to bring that up here really quick because, with Pittsburgh winning again, and thinking back on past Stanley Cups, that's a comment that I hear come up, that the Chicago Blackhawks are a dynasty. And I have to say no to that now. That they're officially not a dynasty. I was willing to hear the argument out if Pittsburgh didn't win the Stanley Cup again this year, but I have to give Pittsburgh some credit. That I think if they win again here in the next couple years again, Pittsburgh might have the ability to be considered a dynasty. I would even consider that Pittsburgh Penguins a dynasty for these past 2 years. A very, very short dynasty. This upcoming year, I don't think they'll win a Stanley Cup. I think it'll be too difficult. The Metropolitan Division is way too strong and too unpredictable for them to be a for sure win. So, while they can still win a Stanley Cup, I think it's a lot harder for them in the future to win a Stanley Cup. So I'll give them the Pittsburgh is definitely a legacy as well. I think Pittsburgh is a very, very short dynasty because they won back-to-back, and that is very, very impressive in my mind. So back-to-back is really, really impressive. So but I wanted to bring up that topic, like I said, because of Pittsburgh winning, and Chicago being considered a dynasty over the last couple years. I really wanted to bring that up. So, anyways, moving on. Let's talk about something that happened just recently. Very briefly, I want to talk about this. And it's something that I think deserves to be talked about here. The Hall of Fame was announced here. And if you don't know, I am a big fan of Teemu Selanne, and I think he's statistically he's one of the best players in the league. But one of the things I really like about Teemu is his passion for the game, and his how he grew hockey out in Southern California, and California in general. He grew hockey out there, and winning a Stanley Cup with one of the 2007 Anaheim Ducks, with one of my favorite teams to play here in the last decade, and in fact in all of my lifetime. One of my favorite teams, the 2007 Anaheim Ducks. But I love Teemu Selanne, and he just recently got inducted into the Hall of Fame along with his wingmate Paul Kariya. So I wanted to give a little bit of props to them for getting into the Hall of Fame. I know there are other players who made it into the Hall of Fame as well. And props to everyone who made it in. But these players hold, and specifically Teemu Selanne holds a special place in my heart. I watched Teemu retire and play his last game against the LA Kings, and it was tough to watch him leave. But I wanted to give all props and credit to Teemu for having a great career and making it into the Hall of Fame, as well as Paul Kariya. In fact, I didn't even think Paul Kariya would make it into the Hall of Fame, but they put him in the Hall of Fame, and I think he deserves it. But I could see the arguments on why he was a bubble Hall of Famer, on the bubble, on whether he should be in the Hall of Fame or not. So props to both players, and props to both of them for having great careers and being outstanding in hockey and expanding hockey into areas that don't normally have hockey venues or hockey markets. So yeah, props to them. Moving on though, let's move on here. I want to talk about the expansion draft here. So I have the Golden Knights roster, as you can see here, and it's a very interesting roster to say the least. And so we're gonna talk about this here. And so we're gonna do that. Let's break this down for you. And this did a weird. Hold on. While I fix this here. There we go. Okay. So here you go. You'll be able to see who was selected. Lots of interesting players. We're gonna break down the draft. And we're gonna break down what I think about it. And we're gonna break down my thoughts and opinions on it. Here, let's make me bigger here. Boop, just a little too big. All right. So let's break this down for you. So the draft was very interesting. My thoughts on Vegas was going into the draft. and seeing all the players that were could have been selected, uh, I was like, holy cow, this could be one of the most deadly teams in the league. Um, and they had cream of the crop players going into this draft, and I have a couple players that I was scared for. Um, my Anaheim Ducks, the Sammy Vatanen was on that list. I was like, oh no, Sammy Vatanen, no, not Sammy. But they didn't select Sammy Vatanen, and I was very surprised at that. Um, uh, my New York Rangers, I was like, oh no, they have a good list of players to pick from, and unfortunately, they picked from one of the players I like to watch, Oscar Lindberg, but you know, not much else I could do on that. They pulled from some very intriguing uh types of players, I think, too. Um, from I was very confused as to what Nashville really not Nashville, Las Vegas, what Las Vegas really wanted as a team. I thought for a while that they were like, we're gonna win a Stanley Cup in the next 2 years or whatever. But I think based on how they drafted this, they're actually going to be actually physically trying to build their team over the next couple years, and trying to become strong contenders for the Stanley Cup within the next, 10 years. And so it was a very interesting draft. So I'm going to break this down for you guys here, and give my thoughts and opinions very quickly on each player here. So the first player they picked was Calvin Pickard from Colorado. I don't know who you really pick from Colorado. They have they don't really have a whole lot, unfortunately. But they picked a goaltender as their first goal player. They picked a goalie. If you don't know, they had to pick 3 goalies. So you're gonna see 3 goalies in this list. So I thought this is actually a good pick, because you don't want to take up too much cap space with your first pick. That being said, also Colorado does not have a whole lot of players to pick from. This is a good pick as a goaltender. I think it's very important pick. So good pick, not on an amazing pick, but I don't think Colorado had a whole lot for them to pick from in the first place anyway. Vancouver Canucks they picked Lucas Spiza. Interesting player. Has some size to him. A little bit slower of a player. A decent defender. One of the things I noticed about this team is that they're going to try and compete with their division, which is good. But the problem is that with the league becoming a fast and speedy team, I don't know if size is the right answer for them. So we'll figure that out when we watch them. But I don't know if this was a correct pick or not. One of the better picks from Vancouver for sure. We'll find out what happens there. But I think overall decent pick. Not an amazing pick, but decent pick. The Arizona Coyotes, they picked up Teemu Pulkkinen. I don't know what to say here. I thought they could have picked a couple better players. Teemu is young, so very good pick for expanding your team and having players start out young and become stronger throughout. So very, very good pick in that regard. Not gonna be your key scorer by any stretch of the imagination. Good pick, not an amazing pick, but good pick. From the New Jersey Devils, they picked up John Merrill. Now, here's my problem with this. Why pick a defensive player from a team that is struggling hardcore defensively? This blows my mind why you would do this. I would pick a forward. That's my opinion. I would have picked a forward. By the way, they picked a lot of defensive players who, like, they need to get rid of defensive players. That's how many defensive players they picked. I think they picked 13. And they need to get rid of like 6 of them or something like that. So, I don't know why they picked so many defensive players, and especially from the New Jersey Devils. You have decent scoring on the New Jersey Devils you could have picked from. Defensively, not what I would have gone for. Defense is not a place I would have gone from this team. I don't know what they were thinking, but they picked up John Merrill. Okay player, not great. Maybe they were looking in terms of age. I don't know what they were thinking here, but maybe he'll grow. Maybe he'll become a good defensive player. Just not the team I would have picked a defensive player from. Buffalo Sabres, they picked up a forward. Young player again, 22 years old, which is good. And the Buffalo Sabres have some decent forwards. Not amazing forwards, but decent forwards. I think this is a good pick. It's a youth pick, so you're not expecting him to be producing points immediately out of the gate. But really good pick. From the Detroit Red Wings, they picked up Thomas Nosek. Again, I would have picked somebody else. At least they picked a forward here. Yeah, overall, 24 years old, young player again. There's this young player kind of movement going on here in the there's this young player movement going on in the Vegas team, and I think that this is a very good thing for the Vegas team for expanding your team overall. But in terms of overall looking to be producing points immediately out of the gate, I don't know if this will really help them. Decent player. We'll see where he goes. I think it'll be a good player in the future. Not like a superstar or anything, but a good player for them if he stays. Good job for this pick. From the Dallas Stars, they picked Cody Eakin. Now, this is where it gets interesting. Cody Eakin's a very good player. Very good job. Very good pick. Not a little bit of age. A little bit of age here. I'm not sure what else to say here other than good pick. Very, very good pick. From the Florida Panthers, Jonathan Marchessault. I'm not quite sure if I'm saying his name correctly, but very good player here as well. I watched him play with the Florida Panthers in a couple of games, and he was actually a key player in their scoring. He's going to help them out. He's got a little bit of age to him, so definitely going to add some experience, and overall a good player to pick. From the LA Kings, they picked up Brayden McNabb. Very, very good pick here. Well, I should say good pick. Not very, very good pick. Just good pick. McNabb is a great player for the LA Kings. I think you could have picked from other players here, but good pick nonetheless. From the Carolina Hurricanes, they picked up Connor Brickley. Good player. We'll see where this goes. I think he's a good player though. Overall, 25 years old. Again, a young player here. Not super young, but young enough. Going with the younglings here to help your team out. From the Winnipeg Jets, Chris Thorburn, 34 years old. He's a forward. Here's kind of my problem with this. Thorburn's an average player. I don't know. It's just I don't know. I would have picked somebody else from the Winnipeg Jets. It's just not a player I would have picked here. His age doesn't help him out here. He doesn't have a whole lot of goals, and he's a forward. He doesn't have a whole lot of points, and he's a forward. I don't. This pick, I think this pick was meant for a trade or something. I don't know what they're looking for here, but not a great pick here in my opinion. From the Philadelphia Flyers, they picked Pierre-Edouard Bellemare. Great pick. One of the strongest players on the Philadelphia Flyers. Good pick. From the Tampa Bay Lightning, they picked up Jason Garrison. Again, good pick, good defender. Tampa Bay has got a lot of good players on them, or they did at the very least. They started to trade some of those players away. Very good pick, though. I thought for sure that they would have picked up like Jonathan Drouin or somebody like that. We'll see what happens. But overall, a good pick. New York Islanders, Jean-Francois Berube. He's a goaltender. Again, not a team I would have probably picked a goaltender from. I don't know why they didn't pick from Detroit, honestly, because I think that Detroit has with Mrazek being there, they could have gotten Mrazek. I thought he would have been a better goaltender than Berube. Overall, I'm not sure what they were going with this. Young goaltender, so maybe they were going with that as well. From the Nashville Predators. Okay, this one really hurts for Nashville fans. James Neal. Holy cow. James Neal is actually one of the best. I consider him one of the better players in the league. Not the best players in the league, but one of the better players in the league. And very impressive. He's a very impressive player. Played very well for the Nashville Predators. One of the biggest threats on the ice for the Nashville Predators. Holy cow, they're getting a good player here. One of the best picks they actually made in this entire list, to be quite honest. I thought they could have picked better players other than him, but very good, very, very, very good pick. From the Calgary Flames, they picked up Derek Engelland. I don't know what they're going for here. 35-year-old. I don't. He's not one of these players that's like, oh my god, dude. He's an average player in the NHL. Maybe they're just looking for someone to fill the role, looking for someone to just retire there, and end their career as a Vegas Knight. Maybe Calgary didn't want them, and they were just like, we'll take him and have him retire here or whatever. Maybe there's something there, but again, not my favorite pick. I think you could have picked better players out of the Calgary Flames. That's just my opinion. Toronto Maple Leafs, they picked up Brendan Leipsic. Again, you could have picked up someone different here. Not a bad pick. Toronto's loaded with young players. 23-year-old, if you're looking for a young player, you've got that covered. But in my opinion, you could have picked up a better young player than him. Not a terrible player. Only played in the AHL. Excuse me. He's only played in the AHL. I'm sorry. He played 6 games with the Toronto Maple Leafs. But majority of his career has been in the AHL. Overall, okay player. Good thing he's young. That's all what I gotta say for him. Boston Bruins, they picked up Colin Miller. He's a defensive player. Good pick. Good pick. From a team that is solid defensively, this is a good pick. From the Ottawa Senators, they picked up Marc Methot. Oh my god. This is a strong pick. Very good defensive player. Man. Ottawa is going to be hurting from this one. Marc Methot was one of the best players in the playoffs this year. Good player pick. Good player pick. From the San Jose Sharks, they picked up David Schlemko. Decent player. Not a great player, but a decent player. From the St. Louis Blues, they picked up David Perron. This is a good player, but injury prone. So that's kind of my only thing with this pick. He's injury prone. From the New York Rangers, and this hurts me so much. Oscar Lindberg. He's a young player, good prospect to him. Overall good player. I think he could be better coming into the future. This is a good pick. Good pick. Not the best player coming into the league for the New York Rangers or anything, but it definitely hurts in terms of depth. Edmonton Oilers, they pick up Griffin Reinhart. This also hurts the Edmonton Oilers. All these picks really hurt the Edmonton Oil, or not Edmonton Oil. They hurt the NHL as a whole, in terms of every team. But this one really hurts the Edmonton Oilers. He's a good defensive player. He's got some he's got some youth to him. He's a good defensive player. From the Montreal Canadiens, Alexei Emelin. Again, this one hurts Montreal a little bit. Not a whole lot, but enough. Good defensive player. A good team to pull from defensively because they are very solid defensively. Good pick. From the Anaheim Ducks, Clayton Stoner. As an Anaheim Ducks fan, I have to say this. I still don't understand why you didn't pick up Sami Vatanen. I don't have a good reason. Clayton Stoner's a good player, but again, I don't understand why you didn't pick up Sami Vatanen. Clayton Stoner is a older defensive player, big, slow, heavy hitting, but very defensive minded. So maybe you're focusing on the defensive side for that, which is a good thing. But Sami Vatanen can play defense and he can score. Clayton Stoner is not really known for that. So I'm not really quite sure why Clayton Stoner. I was really expecting Sami Vatanen, and I still don't understand why you didn't pick up Sami Vatanen in this pick. So, good pick. Good team to pull defensively from for sure. Anaheim's loaded defensively, but I still don't understand why you didn't pick up Sami Vatanen. Maybe he wanted too much money, but again, I still don't understand why he didn't pick up Sami Vatanen. Minnesota Wild. From them, they picked up Erik Haula. Good pick. Erik Haula is a good forward. Not a great forward, but a good forward. Columbus Blue Jackets, William Karlsson. This hurts. The Columbus Blue Jackets for sure. William Karlsson's a good player. And yeah, very good pick. He's young too. Can score and he's young. This next pick really hurt Chicago. Trevor Van Riemsdyk. Holy cow. Now, this is a defensive player I approve of. The Vegas Knights pulling from. Trevor Van Riemsdyk won a Stanley Cup in 2015 with the Chicago Blackhawks. Very, very good player. I guess I should say very, very good young player, and will be an even better player going into his future. Overall, holy cow, what a good pick. Hurts Chicago in the process. But good pick from the Vegas Golden Knights. For their final goaltender from the Pittsburgh Penguins, Marc-Andre Fleury. I think we all saw this coming, honestly. This is the best pick they could have made all throughout the draft. A good goaltender to pick from, one of the best goaltenders to pick from, has won 3 Stanley Cups, and yeah, overall good player. I know he's won 3 Stanley Cups. I think it's only been 3 if I remember correctly, but maybe I think he's won 3. Either way, he's won a lot of Stanley Cups. 3 is a lot in my opinion. Uh, good pick. Amazing player. Um, he's a very calming force, I think, in the locker room. Great pick. Great pick. Um, so overall, great. One of the best picks, if not the best pick here. From the Washington Capitals, they picked up Nate Schmidt. Decent pick. They're okay defensively. Better than some of the other teams for sure. Um, good pick. A little young, a little on the younger side, which is good. Um, yeah, I think it's a decent pick. Nothing bad to say about that. All right. So here are also some of the other transactions that they picked. So from Anaheim, they picked up Shea Theodore. So they picked up another young defensive player from Anaheim. This one hurt Anaheim, I think. Shea Theodore is an outstanding defensive player. Great job from Vegas. I don't know why Anaheim let him go, but great job by Vegas to pick him up. I'm only gonna go. I don't want to go through the draft picks. I'm just gonna go through who they picked. They acquired David Clarkson from Columbus. I don't know much about David Clarkson, so I'm not really quite sure, but he's a forward. I think Columbus is pretty loaded on forwards, on the amount of forwards that they have. So, okay pick. I think they're going for depth here. They picked up Riley Smith from Florida. This is a good pick. Not an amazing pick, but a good pick. Riley Smith is a good player for the Florida Panthers, and he will be for the Vegas Golden Knights as well. Vegas acquires Alex Turch from Minnesota. Decent pick, not an amazing pick to grab from, or player to grab from. I think this is more of a depth move than anything. They acquire Grabovski and Bischoff from the New York Islanders. Grabovski is a good pick. I don't know much about Jake Bischoff. I don't know how to say his name. I don't know much about him. But Grabovski is a good pick. They picked up Nikita Gusev from Tampa Bay. Good pick. Depth pick, but a good pick. And it looks like that's about it. So overall, I think this is a good set of players to pick from. The Vegas Golden Knights have a lot of good players in their roster, but it's clear to me that they're picking from these players to create a expanding roster for the future. They're not looking to win a Stanley Cup next year, which I think is the right move. But I think they could have picked a little bit better players. Maybe they were just trying to save in cap space for trades and things of that sort. Good list of players to pick from. I think that they could have picked some better players, but overall, a decent list and a good list. Before we leave here, I want to expand this for you here because I want to show you I want to show you guys the New Jerseys for the Vegas Golden Knights here. So, as you can see, we have the black, the gray, as we I think all of us expected it to go black and just be black, gold, and white. I don't remember the gray being in there, but I think they added that charcoal gray. I think it's a nice color. It's a good color. Not sure it should be their primary color, but I think it's a nice color. And then, but if you notice, they added the red. The red is kind of that little red stripe. So they have a little bit of red in their color. I think this is a very good color combination for them. for the mascot they're going for, and the jerseys they're going for. I actually think the color combination actually works for them. I didn't like their original jerseys, which is just black, gold, and white. I didn't really like those. But I think the red helps the gold out here in this sense. Decent jerseys, not amazing jerseys, but decent jerseys. Yeah, decent jerseys overall. Yeah. So let's talk here. And we're gonna break down outside of the expansion draft. I want to talk about free agents here. And so we're not gonna break down the big chunk of free agents yet. I want to talk about a specific player who's, I guess he's not technically a free agent yet, but he will be. And I have some opinions on this for sure. So overall, if you haven't heard, Connor McDavid is discussing an 8-year contract with the Edmonton Oilers, which is fine. I kind of expected that. And he has a $106 million extension with the Oilers. So he's getting the reports are that he's looking at $106 million over the next 8 years. Which would mean an average annual of $13.25 million every year. So I have to do this. I have to go big screen on this. I have to go big screen on this. What? What are you doing, Edmonton? What are you doing? Why? This is okay. I understand the importance of Connor McDavid being on your team. He's a very good player. But don't expect to win a Stanley Cup just because of Connor McDavid. To assume that Connor McDavid is the cause of all of your wins is completely asinine and a very vapid argument to make. Connor McDavid is a very good player, but hockey is a team sport, so start to treat it that way, please. If you want to win a Stanley Cup in the future, Connor McDavid is not the player who is going to win you a Stanley Cup. He's one of the players to lead your team to a Stanley Cup, but he is not a LeBron James. He is not going to carry your team to a Stanley Cup. And I think that the executives at the Edmonton Oilers have lost their minds for even considering this. Because what this is going to cause is it is going to cause a major cap space problem. And players are not going to want to come to Edmonton because there are cap space problems. You want to bring in good players to Edmonton? Good. The best thing to do is to not oversell your players who are on your team and to bring in better players to surround those players. Sidney Crosby doesn't even make this much. Sidney Crosby is by far considered around the league as the best player in the league. And to consider him making this much money is absurd. I mean, Sidney Crosby did not win the Pittsburgh Penguins a Stanley Cup this year. He helped them win a Stanley Cup this year, but he was not the player to win them a Stanley Cup. He was one of the reasons they won a Stanley Cup last year as well, but he was not the reason they won a Stanley Cup. They won a Stanley Cup because of players like Phil Kessel, Carl Hagelin, Evgeny Malkin. They won because of players like Nick Bonino and other players like that. Patrick Hornquist. They won because of Matt Murray. These are players that would not come in if Sidney Crosby took up all of their cap space. This is something that Edmonton needs to understand. If you're going to provide a player this much money, fine, you can do that, but don't expect to win a Stanley Cup anytime soon, because that is not going to happen. Your team is good, but there were problems in your team and reasons your team did not win a Stanley Cup. And while youth was one of the reasons that Edmonton did not win a Stanley Cup this year, there was also scoring depth problems. and depth problems from the fact of, Connor McDavid got shut down actually pretty decently this year in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Now I understand it's his first year in a Stanley Cup playoff environment, but you play against a team that is going to be super strong out of the Western Conference. So I'm talking a Chicago Blackhawks team, a St. Louis Blues team, a Anaheim Ducks team, a San Jose Sharks team, a Vegas Golden Knights team, as we just saw a decent team come from expand into the league. Teams that are going to give you a run for your money are going to learn how to shut down Connor McDavid. And shutting down Sidney Crosby has been a difficult task over the years, but it's been done. We've seen it from multiple teams. We just haven't seen it recently from teams who have provided enough haven't provided enough pressure on Sidney Crosby to win a Stanley Cup, or to push the Pittsburgh Penguins out of the Stanley Cup running. I'm not saying that Edmonton cannot win a Stanley Cup over the next 10 years, but this is a very, very, very stupid move for the Edmonton Oilers. If you want to consider yourself a really good team, I mean, here's how I view Edmonton. Edmonton could be another dynasty in the making if they don't overprice Connor McDavid. If you bring players in around Connor McDavid and you leave cap space to bring in other players around Connor McDavid, you could be a dynasty. You could be. But if you price him at this, I highly doubt you'll be a dynasty. You'll win some Stanley Cups, but I don't think you'll be a dynasty. And the question comes from the Edmonton Oilers. Do they want to just win Stanley Cups, or do they want to be winning lots of Stanley Cups? Because I think they could win lots of Stanley Cups. Now, that's not to say they're going to win the next 10 Stanley Cups. Edmonton Oilers fans this year got really, really obnoxious and were saying that they're going to win the next 20 years of Stanley Cups in a row. And, I'm being a little over-exaggerant, but they're, coming in and bashing Anaheim Ducks fans because, oh, we're the Edmonton Oilers. Stop. Calm yourselves. It came in bashing, basically every team in the league. Nashville did the same thing, and it was really annoying. And I understand you haven't been in the playoffs for a while, but learn to respect other teams in the league, please. But that being said, let's move on. Let's talking about the Edmonton Oilers winning Stanley Cups. They could win Stanley Cups and they could be a dominant force in the league, but don't expect to be bringing in lots of players to surround Connor McDavid, because the players you want to bring in might want to come in to play with that Connor McDavid, but they may not want to take that salary drop to play with Connor McDavid. That might be the case. So don't expect that to happen if you're the Edmonton Oilers. If it does happen, I'll be surprised, and then you made a good deal, but I'm not expecting the Edmonton Oilers to be the dynasty team that it could have been if this deal happens. I'm not saying they will be a dynasty, but they have a very good chance of being a dynasty if they understand that Connor McDavid could finish out his rookie contract, give him a contract extension, but don't overprice his contract extension. If you give him a decent contract, he will understand that his role is going to be surrounded by good players. That's the whole point of bringing good players in around your superstars. It's not having your superstars carry you to a Stanley Cup. This is not the NBA. This is the NHL, where teams go to Stanley Cup finals and win Stanley Cups, not players. So, Edmonton really needs to take a hard look in the mirror and say, what do I want to be in the next 20 years? Because in the next 10 years, this deal will hurt them in the next 10 years. If they want to deal with that, that's on them. But they don't don't start crying if they don't start winning Stanley Cups because of this deal, if this deal goes through. So, overall, decent. I understand extending the contract for Connor McDavid. I fully approve of that as a if you're Edmonton, I fully approve of that. The problem is the money. That's the problem. And the salary cap is an issue. And when you don't take that into account, it creates major problems. So that's what I have to say about this deal. If you're Edmonton and you're smart, you don't pay him this much, and you pay him at least half this. I would pay him. I would still pay him millions, but I'd be paying him like $6 million a year. Do not go to the 13.5 to 14 million range, because your salary cap will take a huge hit, a very, very huge hit, and it'll hurt you. And we've seen this from teams in years past. Edmonton's made some very stupid moves over the last couple years, and it's hurt them. And finally being able to pick Connor McDavid has helped them, and picking a good coach has really helped them as well. But don't come expecting to win a Stanley Cup because you have Connor McDavid. That's not a good move. Don't expect to win a Stanley Cup because you have Connor McDavid. That's stupid. Build a team around him and understand that salary cap is important, and don't overprice Connor McDavid. That's what I have to say about it. Connor McDavid's a great player and could be one of the best players in the league once Sidney Crosby leaves, but don't overprice him right now. He's still a rookie. Don't overprice him. Let's move on. I like Edmonton, but let's move on here. So, speaking of, players that are in the league that are trying to get signed, let's talk about free agents here. So we're gonna break down the free agents of the league. So here we go. These are all the top free wingers in the league. These are players who have experience, players who have either, some of them have some age to them, but players who have experience, who would be great picks throughout the league and are dominant players in the league. So, the first player they bring up is Alexander Radulov from Montreal. If you didn't watch any of the playoffs this year, Alexander Radulov was an outstanding player for Montreal. Was a big threat in the first round. And very, very important player for the Montreal Canadiens offensively. The problem becomes that offensively, Alexander Radulov was all by himself trying to score goals. Montreal picked up Jonathan Drouin. So you need Alexander Radulov to help out with Jonathan Drouin. Yeah. By the way, I said Jonathan Drouin for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and that Vegas should have picked up Jonathan Drouin. I meant other players who are along the skill level of Jonathan Drouin. I wanted to correct myself here. But because Montreal did pick him up. But Montreal needs Alexander Radulov here. He's a very good player. As you can see here, his possible landing spots. He could re-sign with the Montreal Canadiens. The Vegas Golden Knights could pick him up. I'm not quite sure what they're going to go for here in terms of the Vegas Golden Knights. They're a very unpredictable team for me at the moment, so I'm not quite sure if they'll pick him up or not. The Edmonton Oilers could pick him up. I have to say, not if he's not if they sign Connor McDavid to that deal. He's gonna want more money because he was a threat in the playoffs this past year, and rightfully so. I think he deserves more money because he did a decent amount of work. I don't think he lands in Edmonton. San Jose Sharks. actually a good pick. A good fit. He would fit very well in the San Jose Sharks organization. They have the cap space for him. If they get rid of players like Marleau or Thornton. Overall, I think a good pick for the San Jose Sharks. Yeah, he could be a good pick. I think the best places he'll land, or best places he will sign, are the Montreal Canadiens or the San Jose Sharks. Honestly, that's just where he'll probably end up. I don't see him landing with the Edmonton Oilers. Vegas is too much of an unknown at the moment. Jaromir Jagr. Haha. Jaromir Jagr has traveled around the league to a lot of different teams here. And right now he's with the Florida Panthers. He's doing a lot of good work with the Florida Panthers as well. I think overall he stays with Florida. Florida really wants to re-sign him. I think Jaromir Jagr wants more money than what they're willing to give. They want to sign him for less money so they can bring in more people, which is a very fair point. Jaromir Jagr is not a 50 goal scorer. He's not in his prime. He's a good experienced player and he knows how to play hockey. Florida overall, I think Jaromir Jagr is a good player and a good fit for Florida. I think Florida tries to sign him again. They really want him, and for good reason, I think. I think he stays in Florida. The Golden Knights apparently are, according to this article on the NHL, the Golden Knights are apparently a good fit as well. I think the Golden Knights are going to be on basically all of these players because they're like, unsure of what's going to happen here. But I think Jaromir Jagr stays in Florida. I really don't see him moving outside of Florida. He's not in his prime. There's not a lot of, teams might want him, but nobody wants him as much as Florida. I think he stays in Florida. I just do. Good fit in Florida. Good experience, good youth for him to mentor. Overall, I think he stays in Florida. Thomas Vanek of the Florida Panthers as well. Again, Vanek has, I think, more picks or more areas he could end up. I think that he stays with Florida, in my opinion. Florida would be really smart to re-sign him. But I could see him being traded more than I can see, or him re-signing with a different team more than I can see Jaromir Jagr. I could see him signing with the Panthers. I could see him signing with the Kings. The Flyers I could see him signing with. I don't see him signing with the Capitals really, and I don't really see him signing with the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think he stays with the Panthers, the Kings, or the Flyers. I think those, out of this group of players, I think he stays with this, those three teams. That's just how I see Thomas Vanek, though. Patrick Marleau. Patrick Marleau is a very interesting player. I think he wants to stay in San Jose. He really does want to stay in San Jose. But I could see him signing with other teams as well. The New York Rangers apparently would want him. Here's kind of my problem with the Rangers signing Patrick Marleau. Patrick Marleau is an older player. And the Rangers are kind of on this track of, we're in a rebuild. We need to bring in some youth, bring in experienced players, or bring in players to gain experience who are young. That's kind of what we want to do. And because of that, I could see New York doing it, but my problem is I don't see New York spending a lot to sign Patrick Marleau. I could see it happening, and it wouldn't surprise me if it happened, but I think right now, from with how the trades have gone, how the draft pick went, I think that the Rangers are leaning more towards the side of not signing him. That being said, I could see it happening though. San Jose, I think San Jose really wants Patrick to retire with San Jose. So it wouldn't surprise me if San Jose makes a deal with Patrick Marleau. The Boston Bruins is another team that I can see happening as well. I think Patrick would rather be with a New York Rangers team, though. I don't see him being with a Boston Bruins team. I think Patrick Marleau fits better into a higher scoring team. So I think the New York Rangers, he fits a lot better there. Excuse me. Overall, I see him fitting more into that Sharks lineup the most. But I could see him being with the Rangers. I don't really see him going to the Bruins, but it could happen. Justin Williams of the Washington Capitals. Williams has a lot more ability to kind of change and flip around here. I think that he has the ability to re-sign with the Capitals, but I don't think the Capitals really want him. He hasn't really produced a whole lot for their team as much as he did with the Kings, and I think that's hurt them. I could see him signing with the Oilers if McDavid doesn't take up all their cap space. I could see him signing with the Rangers. I actually see him signing more with the Rangers than I do see him signing with the Oilers. I think he actually likes staying in the East more than staying in the West. I don't see him signing with the Bruins. I could see him signing with the Lightning. I think he signs with the Lightning or the Rangers. Between those two, probably. I could see him signing with the Islanders as well. I don't see him signing with the Predators. I just think with how Justin Williams is built and how he plays and his play style and what he's used to and what teams he's played on to win a Stanley Cup, Rangers, Lightning, Islanders. Those are my picks. I don't see him re-signing with the Capitals. I think he goes to the Rangers would be my first pick. I know I'm being optimistic as a Rangers fan here, but I actually do see him going to the Rangers. And I could see him going to the Lightning as well. Very, very close second. Islanders. The Islanders have a problem a little bit with offense. So it wouldn't surprise me if they go for him. The problem is that they need someone who's more of a threat offensively. Not that Justin Williams isn't a threat offensively, but they need someone who's more of a consistent goal scorer. And Justin Williams is out of his prime. So I think the Rangers or the Lightning pick him up. Patrick Sharp from Dallas, former Chicago Blackhawk, former Stanley Cup champion. He's a free agent. The Dallas Stars could sign him. The Blackhawks, the Kings, the Bruins, the Islanders, the Flyers, and the Hurricanes. Whew, it's a big list. I think the Blackhawks out of this list, I think the Blackhawks have the best opportunity to re-sign him. I think actually teams out of the East have better chances of signing him. I actually will add Anaheim on this list. I think Anaheim could sign him as well. I know he's a little bit more of a Kings kind of style player, but I could see Anaheim signing him. Anaheim's been looking for some good goal scoring, and he could provide that with the experience of winning a Stanley Cup. He could provide the experience along with Ryan Getzlaf, Corey Perry, and Randy Carlyle behind the bench. I think he could help them win a Stanley Cup. So I actually think that Anaheim is actually a good pick here as well. Chicago, I think Chicago has a good pick as well here. But my problem with Chicago is I think Chicago understands they're in a rebuild. And the players they won Stanley Cups with 2 years ago are not in their prime anymore, and they're not getting any younger. So they're not going to look for the players they used to have that they have already traded away. I think they're going to start to look for some youth. And Patrick Sharp isn't the embodiment of youth anymore. So I don't think Chicago picks up Patrick Sharp. I think that I could see him landing with the Islanders. I could see him landing with the Ducks. Could see him re-signing with the Stars. The Kings, I could see him re-signing with. And I think that out of the East, maybe a Washington. I could see him signing with Washington. I could see him signing with a Tampa Bay. Teams with speed, I think he fits in. He's a little bit on the slower side, but I think he could still fit into the teams with speed. The Islanders are a good example of that. We'll see where he ends up, but he's got some options. Verbata of the Arizona Coyotes. He's got some options, but again, he's gonna want to go to a team that wants age, and he's gonna want to go to a team that wants to have him. We'll find out where he wants to go. New Jersey, maybe. The Islanders, maybe. He's gonna want to go to a cup contender. I don't think Chicago wants him. The Coyotes are going to probably want him as well, but we'll find out what Verbata wants. I could see him going to the Bruins. I don't know. Verbata is an interesting player who's been on Arizona's team for a while. We'll see what happens with him. Jerome McGinley. I think he either stays with the King. I think he just stays with the Kings, honestly. I really don't see him moving outside of that. Yeah. He just doesn't really want to move. Maybe goes to an Edmonton Oilers team. Problem being is he's not really all that offensively inclined anymore. He used to be really offensively inclined, but I don't think he's really all that offensively inclined. And he's way out of his prime. My apologies. He's really not in his prime anymore. Yeah, I don't know how many teams really want him. Maybe stays with an LA Kings team. Chris Versteeg. Chris Versteeg actually has some options here. I know he's listed as a Flames, Blackhawks, Oilers, Golden Knights, Kings, Hurricanes, and Flyers. But I'm going to add on this list Rangers, Islanders. I'm going to also add on here Ducks. I'm going to add on here Tampa Bay Lightning. And I'm also going to add Dallas Stars. Those would be the 5 that I would also add onto this list. Very interesting list that they gave. All teams that could pick him up. I don't know about the Edmonton Oilers picking him up. The Ducks could pick him up again. Or I'm sorry, they could pick him up is what I should say. I could see the Ducks picking him up. I could see the Kings picking him up. Also maybe San Jose. See what happens there, maybe. Also could see Islanders. The Islanders could use him as well, in my opinion. Overall, he's got some options as well. Chris Kunitz of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Interesting list that they gave. I think he stays with Pittsburgh or ends up in Anaheim. I really don't think he really wants to go anywhere else. I really just don't see him playing anywhere else. He's getting older. I could see him wanting to reunite with a Ducks team who has a good shot at potentially winning a Stanley Cup in the next couple of years as well. I think he goes back to Anaheim or stays with Pittsburgh. I'm leaning more towards staying or going to Anaheim as opposed to staying in Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh wants to get rid of him because he's older. That's my opinion. So yeah. Shane Doan. Blackhawks, Kings, Ducks, and Golden Knights. I think he goes to either, out of this list, the first three. I don't think the Golden Knights really want him. I think they're just throwing the Golden Knights because they're not sure. I could also see him going to maybe a New York Rangers team. Problem is he's old. I could see him going to an Islanders team. Again, he's old. That's the problem. Shane Doan's old. Who wants Shane Doan? And who wants his age? If you would have asked 4 or 5 years ago, he probably would have gotten picked up pretty quickly. But I don't know. We'll find out. I don't know where he ends up, honestly. I don't really know if the Ducks really want him. Blackhawks, I could see them picking him up. I could see the Ducks picking him up. I could see the Kings picking him up. But the problem is I don't know how many teams actually really want him for his age. But he really wants to join a cup contender. He's not going to join a team that's like, oh, hey, we're in the process. So I'm not really quite sure why they put the Golden Knights here. He's not going to join a team that's up and coming. He's going to want to join a team that's a cup contender, straight out of the gate. And that's all the players they have. Overall, I think the players that are going to be talked about the most being moved: Justin Williams, Thomas Vanek, and Kunitz. Those would be my players that I think are going to be talked about the most. So, talking about free agents, let's transition into goaltenders. Why don't we? This one's a little bit shorter, so we'll be really quick on this one. All right. So, first one, Brian Elliott from Calgary. He's not going to get re-signed. He just isn't. He didn't play very well in Calgary, and Anaheim made him pay. They just made him pay. And it really hurt Calgary. And they're not going to re-sign him. I could see him signing with the Flyers. Maybe not. I don't see him signing with the Winnipeg Jets. Maybe the Canucks, depending on if Miller moves. I could see him going to the Vancouver Canucks. Especially could see him going to the Flyers. Steve Mason out of Philadelphia. Chicago, maybe as a good backup. I don't see him re-signing in Philly. Chicago, maybe. Pittsburgh, maybe. I don't really know if he'll sign with Pittsburgh. Ottawa, no. I don't see him signing with Ottawa. Vancouver, maybe. And the Winnipeg Jets, probably not. I really do see him going to Chicago. Out of this list, would be the best place for him to go, probably. Ryan Miller out of Vancouver. Yeah. He could stay with the Vancouver Canucks. I don't think Ryan Miller wants to stay with a team that's not going to win a Stanley Cup. Vancouver's just not going to win a Stanley Cup. I don't think he wants to do that. So, Flyers? No, not really. Senators? No, not really. Anaheim Ducks? Most likely. Out of this list, Vancouver or Anaheim, I'm leaning more towards Anaheim. And I don't say that because I'm a Ducks fan. I say that because the Ducks want to get rid of Bernier probably and pick up Ryan Miller, who could take over as starting goaltender with the defense of the Anaheim Ducks. It's a pretty good goaltender pick, and he could take over while John Gibson still learns and gets into his rhythm. Learn under Ryan Miller, an outstanding goaltender. I think he goes to Anaheim out of this list. Antti Niemi out of Dallas. He's getting moved. There's no doubt about it. Going to the New York Rangers as a backup goaltender. Yeah, I could see it. But I highly doubt he will. But I could see it. The Philadelphia Flyers. I could see it. Probably won't happen, but I could see it. Colorado Avalanche, that I could see for sure. Toronto Maple Leafs as a backup. And the LA Kings as a backup, yes. Out of this list, he either goes to Colorado or Toronto. I don't see any other places. I don't think New York really wants him. Jonathan Bernier, the Anaheim Ducks, the Penguins, the Jets, the Maple Leafs, and the Rangers. I don't think the Ducks really want him. If they can pick up Ryan Miller, would be a much better goaltender for them, I think. Jonathan Bernier was a good goaltender, but not the best. I think Ryan Miller would be a better pick. I could see him going to Winnipeg. I could potentially see him going to Pittsburgh. I think that the Rangers would want him the most. That's my opinion. Good backup to Henrik Lundqvist. Could be a starting goaltender while you find another goaltender to take over that role. Not a good goaltender to formally or officially take over the role for Henrik Lundqvist, though, in my opinion. That's kind of the question for New York. Does New York really want a goaltender who's a backup, or do they want a goaltender who will take over for the King? And I don't know if Bernier fits that role. He's a good backup, but I don't know if he'll fit that role or not. Out of this list, Pittsburgh. Don't see him going back to the Maple Leafs. I could see Winnipeg picking him up. Maybe the Rangers. Chad Johnson out of Arizona. Yeah. I could see him signing with a lot of teams. I could see him signing with the Flames, the Ducks. No, actually, I can't see him signing with the Ducks. Maybe Pittsburgh. Maybe Edmonton. Edmonton does need a good backup, so I could see him signing with Edmonton. Don't see Anaheim doing it. Don't see the Penguins doing it. The Flames, I could see him doing it. And the Coyotes, I could see re-signing him. Andrei Pavlik. I honestly think he just stays with Winnipeg. I really don't see I don't see a team outside of Winnipeg that he would. I don't know. I see him staying with Winnipeg, but he could go to the problem is I don't see him going to the Minnesota Wild. I could see him going to the Buffalo Sabres. I don't see him going to the Maple Leafs. The Maple Leafs are in their rebuild and they're like up and coming. I really don't see the Maple Leafs picking another goaltender. I think he goes to either the Buffalo Sabres or he stays in Winnipeg. Jonas Enroth does not stay in Anaheim. There's no reason for him to stay in Anaheim. I say he goes to the Calgary Flames. I don't think the Buffalo Sabres want him. And I don't see the Ducks wanting him. And that's all of the goaltenders here. So, overall, decent list. I think Decent goaltenders on the list, not amazing goaltenders, but decent list. All right. Moving on from free agents. We're going to talk about one specific player out of this article that I want to talk about here. This is an entire mailbag of different lists that that could be selected here. We're going to talk about Ilya Kovalchuk. And so Dan Rosen was answering this. Just make sure I have everything here. So, the question was asked, who has the best chance of signing Ilya Kovalchuk? And he says the New Jersey Devils are the only team to sign him right now. If the Devils can work out a sign and trade, with another team. They could also sign Kovalchuk and keep him for at least half the season. Find out his trade value on the market. Remember, he hasn't played in the NHL since 2013. Hope he exceeds expectations, then trade him. Teams he could go to. Montreal could use him. Toronto might use him because Lou Lamoriello was the former general manager for the New Jersey Devils, has some ties there. The San Jose Sharks, Pete DeBoer was the coach of Kovalchuk, so potential there. The Vegas Golden Knights could trade for him, get rid of some of the defensemen that they have an overstock of. And the Devils definitely need defensemen. The Islanders still need another scorer, so they could pick him up or trade for him. The Columbus Blue Jackets could try and get with him. There's a decent list here. One of the teams that you'll notice is not on this list is the New York Rangers. There was a good talking about the New York Rangers picking up Ilya Kovalchuk, and I really don't see Ilya Kovalchuk coming to the New York Rangers, and there's a good reason for this. The New York Rangers, I think, are focusing on bringing in young talent and bringing in rebuild players. Ilya Kovalchuk is out of his prime. He's not a player who would help them out. Plus, he's a lot to deal with his personality and all that. I really don't see the New York Rangers bringing him in. I say the New York Rangers leave him out of this, and I think that they did a good job of leaving him out of this list. I think that if he signs anywhere, he signs with the Devils and potentially stays with the Devils, honestly. He either signs with the Devils, stays with the Devils, and then the Devils trade him to a team like the Montreal Canadiens. Or the San Jose Sharks. Those are the two teams I see him going to. Most likely the Montreal Canadiens if he's traded. That's my opinion. But here's my thing. I don't really see Ilya Kovalchuk being this big threat in the league that everyone sees him to be. I think he's out of his prime. When he left the league, he was stupid. I don't think any teams really want him. He's too much of a hassle. I mean, he's a problem in the KHL. He's got some attitude problems there. I don't really see him coming back as a threat that he thinks he's going to be. He's an okay player. He's out of his prime. Not a lot of teams really want him. He'll be a good threat if he went to Montreal. But that's about it. Okay. Let's move on. I like Ilya Kovalchuk as a player. He's got some good skill to him, but I think he stays with New Jersey or goes to the Montreal Canadiens, honestly. All right, finally, let's talk about something that happened just recently here. We're going to talk about the New York Rangers. I know I'm a little biased here, and I'm wearing the new draft cap that was just released by Adidas. As you can see, he's got the stripes on the side here. I really like this hat. Go and pick one up. they're good hats for every team, honestly. That being said, let's talk about the New York Rangers. So the New York Rangers signed Brendan Smith, who's a defenseman that they traded for. He came from Detroit, and they traded for him, and he came in the very, very back half of the season, and he did actually pretty well, in my opinion. And they signed him, which was a very, very good deal. They needed to do this. A 4-year, $17.4 million contract. It's a very, very good deal for the New York Rangers. They need defensemen. Good job keeping him in the lineup. As if you've not been following, Dan Girardi got bought out, so Dan Girardi's looking for potential moves. But I think that this was one of the better things they could have done. The New York Rangers did a good job with this. They need defensemen, and he definitely fits the bill of a good defenseman for them. Overall, good job, New York, for signing him. Yeah, good pick for the New York Rangers to re-sign him. So, that leads into I want to talk really briefly about what are the Rangers looking for. Well, the Rangers are looking for a good. They need some centers. They got rid of Derek Stepan recently, and the Rangers are definitely looking for some centers here. And Nick Bonino's on their list, and they need to pick up some good centers to win them faceoffs. Nick Bonino's outstanding in faceoffs, and definitely would fill that role that Derek Stepan really did not do very well at last year, which is winning faceoffs. I actually think that Nick Bonino would actually be more productive than Derek Stepan as well. So sign him to a decent contract. Do not overpay him. Do not pay him the amount of money you paid Derek Stepan. Overall, I think Nick Bonino is definitely on their radar. Definitely a player they need. They could be looking for some younger players to win faceoffs for them. Hopefully that's the case. But I think that he definitely would fit the bill for the New York Rangers. So the biggest thing they're looking for is centers. They also need scoring. They did not have any scoring out of the playoffs this past year. The question still remains, do the Rangers buy out Rick Nash and trade him, or do they wait till his contract ends to trade him? And there's a big flip-flop on that. My prediction is they buy him out and they trade him. Get rid of get rid of Rick Nash, bring someone else in. Now the downside to that is it takes up cap space. But maybe you can work out a deal where you say bring someone else in who's a good goal scorer here, and say, hey, listen, we'll give you Rick Nash if you give us, so and so, and that person's like, well, I want this much money, and they'll say, listen, we'll sign you to a 1-year deal, and we'll get you this much money, and then when next year rolls around, if you do well, we'll pay you more money. And that's how I could see it happening, see it playing out. The other thing is there's some good players that hit the market in a year, and I could see them trying to push for saying, hey, listen, there's nobody on the market we really want right now. Let's just keep Rick Nash in our lineup and see what happens. Maybe he shows up for whatever reason. Or, the expected happens. We trade him out, get some better players to take in his spot. So that could be a potential as well. So I think the Rangers really look for that center, and they look for that good winger to take over for Rick Nash to provide pure goal scoring. I could see them trying to go for like an Alex Ovechkin, which I don't think they should do, but I could see them trying to do it. Could see them trying to get like a Justin Williams, which I could see them trying to do. I'm not really sure that they should do it. But I could also see them waiting a year to get rid of Rick Nash. So Overall, that's what I think they're going to do. I think there's going to be some very interesting trades. Teams to look out for here. Outside of the New York Rangers, there's some teams I would look out for. And so the teams I would look out for here are I would look out for the Anaheim Ducks. I think they're going to make some big trades. Their GM always makes some very outstanding moves. Anaheim Ducks, the Pittsburgh Penguins, San Jose Sharks, New York Rangers, Washington Capitals, Philadelphia Flyers, and I would also say maybe the LA Kings as well. And even I would even go as far as to say the Golden Knights. They're a team to look out for in terms of trades. So overall, good trading list coming up here. Montreal is also a team to look out for as well as out of the East. And Columbus, good teams to look out for very, very impressive trades to come out. I think that could happen. So, anyways, that has been the Hockey Sense podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know this one's a little bit longer, but I wanted to catch up and talk about all these things that that really happened over the past couple the last 3 weeks. Make sure I cover them. Make sure you guys hear my opinions on them. So overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I enjoy doing these. I will my goal is to shoot for a podcast this upcoming weekend. It'll probably be a little bit shorter since I covered a lot of the stuff that has happened over this week. So stay tuned. There should be a podcast coming out this weekend. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll talk to you guys later. And as always, subscribe for more content. Leave a like down below. Comment what you think happens in the league via trades. If you want to talk about the Stanley Cup final at all, leave a comment down below there. What do you think about Connor McDavid? What do you think your team should do? Who do you think certain players go to? Leave a comment down below. I really want to hear your guys' thoughts. Also, I've been doing this format. This is the third time I've used this format. Let me know what you guys think about this format. I think I've gotten some pretty positive feedback from some of the people that I know. If you like this comment, leave a comment down below, or just let me know you like the format, don't like the format. What would you do differently if you don't like the format? So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I really like doing these podcasts, and I will talk to you guys later. Yeah. So thanks, and yeah, see ya.